Hello and welcome to the webinar. I'm George Malin, the Managing Editor of IoT Now, and I'm delighted to introduce today's topic, which is the SGP.32 advantage, simplifying eSIM management for the IoT era. Now, it might seem weird to have a webinar about a technical specification, but SGP.32 is truly transformative in terms of how organizations can simplify and automate eSIM provisioning and achieve frictionless connectivity. For the first time, we have a made for IoT specification that means IoT doesn't have to force fit designed for consumer specifications such as SGP.22 or use outdated ones designed for an earlier age. The promise here is to enable IoT devices to switch networks with zero touch and achieve global eSIM connectivity with similar simplicity to the eSIM a consumer might buy on holiday. This means IoT device deployments can scale up easily and securely, so time to market can be accelerated and operational complexity can be reduced. Having outlined the promise of simplicity that SGP.32 offers, there are inevitable complexities within the specification to be detailed, and I'm delighted that today's speakers are here to explain those. With us, we have Damanjeet Singh Chopra, the Technical Account Manager at Giesecke+Devrient, and Waleed Badawy, the Director of Global Business Development for Solution Sales M2M, also at G&D. Before handing over to Waleed, I should point out that both speakers will be staying on after their presentations to take questions from the audience. To participate in that, simply enter your question into the panel on your screen, and I will put it to the relevant speaker later on. Now, without further delay, let's get started. Waleed, the floor is yours.
Thanks, George, for the introduction, and thanks for having everybody on board. So please allow me to take the main call here and start talking about G&D. So just to give a reference about what G&D is, where do we stand on our history? So we are a global security tech company for a long time here. We are securing different kind of devices that most of the people use. One of the things that we always keep on saying that eSIM is in our DNA. So since the beginning, since we started back in the 2011 or 2012, we are the pioneer providing that. So really talking and seeing the market and the amount of devices or customers or eSIMs that we delivered, we are, let's say, happy to introduce ourselves to be the #1 in eSIM management all over. We have over 1.1 billion devices that we are providing with our EOS already onboarded. We have over 50 million eSIMs delivered. We offer, let's say, a massive amount of customers that we covered worldwide. So one of the big advantages that we always talk about is we have enough history, we have enough knowledge, we have enough reference points to say, okay, this is why we are trying to help to introduce the IoT into the market.
Great, thank you, Waleed. Just a quick question on that. Since G&D operates in the IoT space, can you tell us how the company is contributing to the evolution of IoT connectivity?
Okay, thanks, George. That's really a good question, and will bring me forward to, let's say, the challenges or the main thing that we are trying to gap and really utilize the IoT specs to take that forward. So one of the big question mark that everybody, let's say, talk about is why do we really need eSIM for IoT? So it's a big challenge. It's not only about specification that we really need to look to, but we really need to address the market and understand the business need that this subscription management systems would provide. So it's not only about the technology, but the technology is the baseline for the enablement. So who really would really look to that? So whenever we look to that from our perspective, we really need to think about the business side of things. So we always, let's say, look that we produce a piece of hardware, or somebody would produce a piece of hardware, not because of nothing, but you have to have a baseline. So it starts all over by saying, we have a product idea, or somebody comes in and say, I have a product idea. And this product idea to be delivered, we need a hardware to build it, and we need connectivity to make it go online. So it's simply a kind of 3 main pillars which you really need to look to it when you start talking about business. It's not only about saying, yeah, SGP.32 would make your life easy and it will solve everything, but you really need to have a business need. So who really needs that? So this is where we are saying that's the main pillars where we really need to have a business perspective. We need to have a look to every of that and start picking that forward.
Great, Waleed. So from your experience, how are these different deployments navigating their unique connectivity challenges, and where are the overlaps emerging between them?
Okay, so thanks, George. So one of the big, or not one, but actually there's a lot. So one of the things that we always look for is the real challenges that we see in the market. So it's not only by saying, okay, we define different angles, but we really need to address all these angles with their own challenges. So looking to connectivity, looking to a piece of hardware, and based on somebody who really decide that I need to have my idea in mind, I need to have my product running out there, what should I do? So they start, let's say, coming back to say, okay, but we have a lot of concerns. We have a lot of different markets that they had different needs. We have roaming, we have international global connectivity that we need to look for. We need to be really digging into details how our product will comply to the specifications, how our product will comply to security and data integrity. There's a lot of big concerns, a lot of big challenges that we are trying to close this gap by saying like, okay, how far can we take this? What is the pinpoints that everybody is being challenged towards? So we really need to look that into details to understand where is the problems to be able to solve it. It's not by saying, okay, so the specification is the baseline that you cannot move around, but you really need to see each and every detail. How can I fix that from the different perspectives? And we would take this a little bit more into details to understand that. And then let me go a little bit forward about that and really looking to the situation in the current market. So as of today, there is an existing specification that was there since some long time ago, which is the SGP.02. This SGP.02 was the baseline that the whole market was talking about for providing connectivity from machine to machine. Things are evolving, things are picking up, and we see a big trend happening in the market. So simply most of the customers that is building their devices based on the machine to machine are now looking to the 32 because it's the way forward. So we are using IoT based specification. We are relying on advancement of the SGP.22 that was introduced for consumer, and we are picking that up. So if we really look to the hardware availability and the hardware deployed all over, currently we see a big peak happening that will not really remove all what we have, but will start picking up. So by the end of 26, 27, we see a major peak that most of the hardware that will be seeded everywhere is going in the direction of 32. So this is where we really see the big challenge to say, okay, 02 already is existing. People understand that, but we see that the future is going to the 32 because there's a lot of, let's say, shortcomings that was available in the 02 that we are trying to remove, take that to the next step, and evaluate it to the next level by saying, okay, more hardware, more market pickup means that we really need to address it correctly to be able to support the massive market. So IoT devices would be a major. It's not something that we would say, oh, okay, that was some use cases. No, this would be the major use case. So this would be the future. So let me take it a little bit further by saying, if we look to the specification of 32, again, we would look to that by saying, okay, we had in mind somebody who designed a product and say, I need my product to be connected. So any IoT device now is by default, you need to think about it as a connected device. You cannot have a defined device that you would say, it will not connect. So it needs to connect. So you need to design your hardware and you need to make sure that your connectivity, whatever kind of connectivity that you need to be available for this hardware. So looking to that and trying to have a kind of different perspective and looking down, we can rename these roles into something that may make sense and try to address that with a different perspective. So For somebody who designed that or designed the idea, we name them a use case owner. So a use case owner in this perspective means somebody who have an idea in mind to control his device, which is coming in a hardware format, to be able to connect it to the networks. So we have this use case owner as the main requiring entity, role, driver, how you would name it. I would not name it or stick it to somebody by saying, this is the kind of manufacturer or this is the OEM. So we define them as roles. So we try to break that down by saying anybody who would be performing an action to get a hardware connected device with some connectivity would play this use case owner role. It doesn't make any difference, or we cannot label that by saying, this should be the OEM, this should be the tier one, this should be the MNO. No, that's how we define it, to be able to provide a core component from our system based on the specification of the 32 to say, okay, this is the piece that we would deliver for this role, what we define. Also the same perspective of the hardware, we name them in a different approach by saying they are the card requester. So from the history, from everything, this is a piece of hardware, which is a card at the end. So it's a SIM, eSIM, it is the representation of a card. So they need to physically have a hardware piece installed in their system. So that's our card requester. So they are the ones who are really building the device. So they need to acquire a piece of hardware, inject it in their device. And this is where we see is like, okay, a card requester is coming in. From the other side, the major part is the connectivity providing. So that's everybody who provides connectivity. It can be whoever that have a connectivity role. It does not really stick or put anybody to say, okay, that's the MNOs or that's the MVNOs. No, it's anybody who says, I would be able to provide connectivity. So from our perspective, we would say, okay, getting your connectivity online, you are being the one providing the core connectivity. So without core connectivity and not building the hardware, there is no use case. So putting all that together in a big picture, this will end up by saying is like, okay, what can G&D put all together in a very high level, let's say, circle, by getting everybody around this big circle. So you can be a use case owner, and the examples are variants. They are very, let's say, unlimited. We just throw in some ideas to say, okay, you can be a car OEM. From our perspective, you are a use case owner. What does it mean? It's like there is somebody who would be building your TCU that you will include in your device. So a car gets a connectivity via a TCU, and this TCU needs to be connected, needs to be already having some connectivity option on board. So as soon as you get that up and running, you need to manage it, but then you need to manage it getting a connectivity and building this hardware, the TCU. You build it and you finish it by saying, I built one building block that fits my car OEM, and I would do release it based on the specification 32. The car OEM may define his use case by saying, I need a device that connects to different countries, different networks, be able to roam, be able to do and bridge any gap for them, doing some unique configuration. It is completely based on the use case on a driver, but at the end, the hardware needs to match the provider, the profile providers. So we would say from our side, the all options are on the table. If they want to handshake with a mobile operator, a virtual mobile operator, even some test networks in some cases have an MNO already having his own onboarding options, which means that they have their data generation, they have everything. What we are trying to do, or what we are trying to say is, we are trying to be the bridge to bridge all of these, let's say, playing roles to come in a core piece by saying G&D is your bridge, your enablement to enable any of these players all around to be able to move that forward and bring them to the same table by saying, okay, specification is there, the use case is there. We are trying, based on our experience, our, let's say, long history of being in the market, different OEMs, different MNOs that we were handling for the past years, to say, okay, we have enough experience on our table, we have enough use cases that we built, how to bring that all on the same big table to make it happen.
Okay, Waleed, so how does your SGP.32 solution support the types of deployments that you've just discussed for us?
Okay, so allow me then to hand over this to Damanjeet, where he can detail it more into, let's say, the technology part of it. Damanjeet, please.
Thank you, Waleed. Thank you, George. So let's take a deep dive into what is the G&D solution. So we call it Aeron 360 IoT solution. And we'll take a step back how this all started. So back in 2023, GSMA introduced a new specification for eSIM management and IoT devices, which is called the SGP.3132. Now, using that technology, OEMs, IoT service providers, what are they able to do? They are able to manage the connectivity of the devices during the lifetime. Now, the SGP.3132 is the specification which is based on the existing consumer technology, which is the SGP.2122, but with some changes. The SGP.2122 requires user intervention in the management of subscription profiles. What SGP.3132 is doing is enhancing this technology in order to address the specific needs of the IoT devices. Example, if you want to push subscription profiles to devices without a user interface, or maybe a network constrained device, and to eliminate the user intervention which was required in the consumer specification. Now, with Aeron 360 IoT, G&D offers the customers a flexible end-to-end solution comprising of all the relevant components which are required to introduce and manage connectivity on the devices. Now, the slide what we see here basically illustrates the relationship between all entities and components in the ecosystem. Let's start from the top, IoT customer backend. So this would be the core service of the customer. It could be having its own GUI or APIs, and what it would do is it would have the possibility to integrate with Aeron 360 IoT Suite to utilize the eSIM and connectivity management functionalities. Going on to the next element, Aeron 360 IoT Suite. Now, this platform from G&D is a single pane of glass, and it provides capabilities to do both operations. Now, what are these two operations we are talking about? It is connectivity management and eSIM device management. It has a very rich GUI, extensive APIs to perform operations. It has hierarchical account system, which enables creation of accounts, sub-accounts, and the platform can be white labeled, which basically allows for complete customization. It also has a robust billing engine inside it, which enables the users and the resellers to efficiently monitor the consumption and streamline the invoice generation. It, of course, offers campaign capabilities. So if you want to do operations in bulk, you want to generate reports, get real-time alerts, you can do that all from this platform. Stepping on to the next element, which is EIM. Now, this is the new element which is defined in the ecosystem of SGP.3132. It stands for eSIM IoT Remote Manager. It provides the means for remote sending of PSMO. What is PSMO? PSMO is Profile State Management Operations, and echo commands. What is echo? Echo is EIM configuration operations to the devices and get responses back. To make it easy, you can basically do management of subscriptions, management of EOICCs using this box in the ecosystem. In case of network constrained devices, this EIM, it acts as a proxy between the SMDP plus and the IPA and is responsible to adapt the protocols. Taking one step down, we see four boxes here: MQTT, lightweight M2M, HTTPS, CoAP. What are these? Well, these are industry known protocols, which are, let's say, extensively used in the IoT market. And these are the protocols which are used for communication between EIM and IPA. Now, the beauty of this spec is that the interface between the EIM and IPA, which is called ESIPA, ESIPA, it doesn't restrict you to use a specific protocol. You could use any protocol out there. The basic requirement is that you should at least have integrity and confidentiality at the message level. Now let's shift a little bit on the left. We see two boxes there. One is external connectivity. What is this? So any connectivity which comes, it could be from an MNO, from an MVNO, from an MVNE, it could be a test network across the globe, would fall in this box. The IoT suite can be integrated with this external connectivity provider to provide connectivity management operations. The connectivity itself can be provided in two options. You could have it as an eSIM profile, which is hosted in an SMDP+, or you could have it as a preloaded profile on the EUICC. Now, before defining external DP+, maybe a few words about what is a DP+. So DP+ is the component which is coming from SGP.22, and as we know, it is responsible to prepare, secure, and store subscription profile packages in a profile package repository. It links and binds a protected profile package with an EID and in turn creates a BPP, which is the bounded profile package. It securely downloads the BPP to the IPA on the device /EUICC. And the SMDP Plus, it works as defined in the SGP.2122 with some optional extensions for eligibility checks, which have been defined in the SGP.3132 ecosystem. And it, of course, provides an API interface which is the ES2 Plus, which is also coming from the SGP.22 specification. So what is the external DP Plus? Where the external connectivity providers can provide their profiles via this DP Plus. So it could be from any vendor, it could be even from G&D. And this DP Plus can integrate with Aeron 360 IoT, and hence the eSIM profiles can be utilized in the ecosystem. Now let's shift a bit towards the right. Again, we see two boxes here. One is G&D connectivity, one is G&D DP Plus. So G&D connectivity is an integrated part of the solution with which the customer can enjoy global connectivity. So it is coming pre-integrated with the Aeron 360 IoT suite, and hence all the features to manage a subscription are available to the user. Now it can be provided as, again, a virtual eSIM profile, which you would probably download in your card, or it could already be present as a preloaded profile on the card. Now, what is G&D DP Plus? So G&D DP Plus, of course, stores the eSIM profiles of G&D connectivity. And it also provides an option wherein if a customer wants to host or have profiles of their own, and they get them as a donation from a connectivity provider or a profile provider, then this DP Plus could be used to host those eSIM profiles. So for example, G&D could get the input file, do the data generation and host it in the DP Plus, or it could get generated data itself and hosted in this DP Plus. Now let's shift to the next block, which we see on the slide, which is the IoT device. Now the IoT device would have its own core processor, its memory, application logic, connectivity module, etc., etc. In terms of SGP.32, what are the core components of this device? It's the SIM, the SIM card, and the IPA. The SIM, as you see here, mentioned as XUICC, it could be EUICC, IUICC. Now, what is EUICC? It is the secure repository to host one or more connectivity profiles. And it basically has two major parts. It has an ISDR and an ISDP. The ISDR is basically responsible for creation of new ISDPs and the lifecycle management of ISDPs. There is only one ISDR which is on an EUICC, which is installed and personalized by the EUM during the EUICC manufacturing. And the ISDP controls the content of the single MNO profile. It's basically an on-card representative of the profile, which is on the DP+. Now, G&D can provide GSMA certified SGP.32 EUICCs in multiple form factors. It could be pluggable, machine form factors 2 and 4 WLCSP, and of course in various grades. So it would be the consumer grade, the industrial grade, or the automotive grade based on the requirement. What is IPA? Well, IPA stands for IoT Profile Assistant. The IPA is nothing but the adaptation of the LPA, which was there in SGP 2122. So it assists in profile download. It plays the proxy role for the efficient download of a BPP into the EUICC from an SMDP+. Well, it also helps in PSMO conveying. So it basically is responsible for the management of profile state management operations, such as enabling a profile, disabling a profile, deleting it, or doing a list profile from the card. And of course, the result of those operations between the EIM and the EUICC. It can also speak to the discovery service to retrieve pending event records and then push them towards the card. And of course, it manages the notification handling. So which means it would forward the notification to the EIM and or the SMDP plus when a profile state is changed. As we see, we have two options for IPA. It could be either on the device and then it is called IPA-D, or you could have it on the EUICC and then it's IPA-E. Moving ahead. Now, what we will do is we will break the ecosystem into blocks which are relevant for the three, let's say, parts which my colleague Waleed explained a few slides back, starting with profile providers. Now, the blocks which would be relevant for a profile provider can be seen in a green box in the slide. Now, what would a profile provider do? What is the role of a profile provider? It would provide connectivity. And for that, it has two options. So it could be preloaded on the EUICC, or you could have it as eSIM virtual profiles. So if you're hosting them as profiles, then you would need a DP+. And if the customer already, or let's say if the profile provider already has the DP+, then it's the external DP+, which it can use to securely host the eSIM profiles. We also have the donation model, which we just explained in the previous slide, where the profiles could be donated, and then the GNDTP Plus could be utilized to host their eSIM profiles. Now, coming on to Aeron 360 IoT Suite. There are various scenarios in which the integration of a profile provider, for example, the BSS or DP Plus, can happen with the GND IoT Suite. What are those scenarios? So a profile provider BSS could be integrated with the GND connectivity management. So in this, the BSS could be integrated via API with the IoT Suite connectivity management interface. It would allow for the profile activation in real time within the DP Plus and the HLR. It supports all relevant SGP.32 use cases, for example, using the activation code, or if you want to use the discovery service, or if you want to use the default DP Plus. Now, other scenario is that the profile provider SNDP Plus is integrated with the GND eSIM management. So this would be done over the ES2 Plus interface if the profile provider allows such integration. This would also allow the profile activation in real time within the SMDP Plus. Again, you could support all the SGP.32 relevant use cases for getting a profile which is using the activation code or the discovery service or the default SMDP Plus. Another manner of integration could be where the profile provider only provides the activation codes, and these can then be fetched into the GND Aeron 360 IoT Suite. So the profile provider would give the activation code to the platform, which could be in an online manner or an offline mechanism. So there is no direct link between the profile provider systems and the GND systems. The only prerequisite here would be that the profiles need to be in released state and activated in the HLR. So this basically supports the SGP.32 activation code use case. With this new specification of SGP.3132, a profile provider has the option to separate IoT profiles and consumer profiles. So it can basically handle and verify new parameters and perform enhanced eligibility checks, which is, let's say, defined in the EUICC info 2 and profile metadata. And based on the new SGP.32 parameters, for example, IoT version, the eCall support, and the fallback support. Now let's shift towards the next role, which is the card requester. So in the role of card requester, you would be touching the blocks or the elements which are highlighted in orange in the slide. Now, in this role, you want to ensure that your card is functioning as per the requirements, which means on a high level, your device is capable of being remotely managed by a backend system. What are the interest points as a card requester? Of course, you would need a card. And once you have a card, what kind of connectivity do you need on the card? What are the options? You could have an external connectivity, or you could have connectivity from GND. How is the connectivity provided? Well, again, the two options. So it could either be preloaded on your card, or it could be as an eSIM virtual profile hosted on a SMDP+. Should the card have preloaded connectivity? Well, is that an option? Yes. Why? Because maybe the first profile on the eUICC or the device is downloaded by alternate means of connectivity, for example, Wi-Fi. Alternatively, the initial connectivity might be needed as the cellular connectivity, and in this case, the card will then have a provisioning/bootstrap profile on it. Another important point which a card requester would think is, what is the approach which I need for the IPA? Should I use IPA-D? Should I use IPA-E? Now, this depends on the use case. Let's say if you need more control from the device perspective, the card requester has the knowledge, has the time and the resources, IPA-D can be implemented. If the card requester has a fit for purpose use case, and let's say they don't want to spend too much time on resources or the knowledge to build IPA-D, then the IPA-E can also be utilized. Another question which would be very important for a card requester would be, is the device a constrained device? And that would lead to a point understanding, would the profile download need to be indirect? Now, what does indirect profile download mean? So it means that the profile from the DP plus comes to the EIM, and then it needs to be translated into the protocol which the device speaks and then sent over to the IPA. Or if the device is not a constrained device, then maybe it can use the direct download channel using HTTPS to get the profile from the DP plus. Another aspect which is very important is the communication protocols. Now here, in the big variety of IoT devices, the capabilities, the communication needs, the constraints, and the lack of a global standard, it has basically led to a market segmentation where there is no one unique protocol which would fit for all IoT market needs or the device characteristics. So the new GSMA specification, what we are talking about today, the SGP.32, it does not mandate any specific protocol to be used for the communication between the EIM and the device for conveying the EIM packages and responses. So what this permits, it permits the IoT device's deployment to use any suitable protocol, which basically ensures that there is integrity and confidentiality at the message level. Now we have some protocols listed here. MQTT, for example. So this is a protocol which is built on top of TCP/IP, and it works on a model of publish and subscribe, where there's a broker server at the heart and is responsible for receiving all messages, filtering them, and sending them to the MQTT clients. There is lightweight M2M. It supports UDP and TCP on top of IP and supports non-IP data delivery as well. It is intended to be used on network constrained devices. Then we see CoAP, which is the constrained application protocol. It is mainly designed to be used on battery powered devices in the IoT world and network constrained devices. It runs on top of UDP, but can also run on top of TCP. HTTPS, well, it is a very well-known connection-oriented protocol, and it runs out over TCP/IP, and it is primarily used in devices which are not network constrained. Now, to sum it up, in the end, what would a card requester need? It would want to test that the cards can speak with an EIM. So they would integrate the eUICCs in the device. They would want access to the EIM to perform operations on the card and manage connectivity and ensure that the desired use case is met. Let's move towards the third role, the use case owners. Now, the elements which would be relevant for the role of a use case owner would be the ones which are highlighted in blue in the slide. Now, the main goal of this role is to be able to manage the devices remotely. So you would mostly have your own core system, your backend. And from this, what you want to do is you want to have the capability that you can manage the devices which are out there. How can you do it? Well, you could either use the GUI of the Aeron 360 IoT suite, or you could also use the APIs which are available from the platform, very rich APIs, and integrate your platform with the Aeron 360 IoT suite and utilize all the functionalities which are of interest. Now, what are the typical, or let's say common functionalities that you would want to do as, as a use case owner? So I would again divide it into two parts. One is eSIM device management and connectivity management. Now within eSIM device management, what you would want to do is you would want to probably download a new connectivity on your card or your device. It could be based on any logic. Some examples, probably there is a location change of the device and you want to get a new connectivity profile on it. Maybe the device is manufactured in location A, but now it is shipped and would be, let's say, used in location B. So you want to probably download a profile for location B. Or it could be any other business decision where you want to change the profile. The other operation would be enabling the profile. So you want to enable it so that you can use it. You could also disable a profile. You could delete the profile from the card. You could also have the option of, or this is what the spec allows, you also have the option of configure immediate enable. Then you don't have to explicitly send another enable profile command after downloading a profile. It could be plugged in one. And then you would probably want to have the function of listing the profiles from the card or getting the latest status of the profiles which are on the card. So these are some typical operations which would fall under eSIM device management.
Great, Waleed. Oh, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
I just had a question that came to mind,
yes,
but I'll wait for you to finish your segment.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think it's the last part here. So the connectivity management. What would you want to do in terms of managing the connectivity? So maybe you want to activate your subscription in the network. You want to suspend your subscription in the network. You have a scenario that, hey, you have used your subscription for some time. You understand that, hey, my device doesn't need connectivity for a certain duration. Why do I have to pay the bill? Maybe you can suspend it for a while in the network. You can reactivate it in the network. Or you could maybe, if you have deleted the profile, for example, and you understand this will not be used, you could terminate the subscription in the network. You could check the CDRs, monitor the data usage, etc., etc. So as a use case owner, you would also want access to reports and statistics of all the operations that are done from the platform. And all of these are available from the Aeron 360 IoT suite. Yep.
Fantastic. Thanks, Damanjeet. Sorry for interrupting you. The question that immediately sprung to mind was, how does G&D help the industry to adopt this SGP.32 solution for their various use cases?
That's a very good question, George. And here, what G&D does is it basically has developed a POC setup, or let's say we can call it a POC package, which is working end to end out of the box. What do we do in this POC package, or what do you get when you take this POC package from us? So you get cards from G&D, and G&D cards are SGP.32 GSMA certified. G&D were actually were the first ones to get their EOICCs GSMA certified. So you get those. For the IPA, again, depending on your approach. So for example, if you want to use IPA-D, then G&D can provide you the reference code and the support to implement it. And if you want to use IPA-E, then IPA is anyways already programmed in the EOICCs and available for your use. In terms of connectivity, if you need, if preloaded connectivity is needed, then integrated G&D connectivity can be provided as Bootstrap or provisioning profile. And when we talk about eSIM virtual profiles, then you can get, again, G&D connectivity eSIM profiles, or you could also bring your own connectivity. In that case, the profile should be in the release state. And to, let's say, complement all of these elements, what you get is a dedicated account in the IoT suite with all the above assets included. So you would have the cards assigned, you would have the profiles hosted, and then you would have the capability to basically test your use cases, both using the GUI and the API. With this, I would hand it over to my colleague, Waleed. Maybe you want to sum it up of what we have spoken about today.
But for the details and explanation and taking these roles and trying to focus on the, let's say, the different parts that we are offering. So there was just in the background, just to let you know, and then maybe we pick it up in the questions and answers. A lot of questions coming in. I try to reply to some of the questions while you are speaking, but yeah, I mean that really is interesting. But just to cover this up and try to explain where do we stand. So, as Damanjeet was explaining, the roles that we talked about in the beginning, they are different roles. We are not, let's say, putting something somewhere, but we are getting a kind of a role defined box, which is coming from the specification to provide the use case we believe is needed for different roles. So finally, it's up to you to define which role you want to play. And in total, you are getting from G&D a complete full package coming from one trusted source. It's a one-stop shop if you would like to do all the options, or you can combine pieces from our, let's say, defined roles, defined boxes to get that all together. So if you would like to get global connectivity, any form factor of the SIM card, or any lifecycle management, including, let's say, some of the things that is happening in the past, maybe we did not talk about it anyway, but SGP.02, there is still some use cases that is still available, some hardware that is still there that will not be upgraded overnight, the devices will exist. Our platform is covering that as well, which means that you get the same pane of glass to access your M2M and your IoT new devices from the same interface. So having access to all that, we are saying like, okay, from our side as G&D, we try to provide the different perspectives of the role by providing the whole 9 yard of all the components defined in the specs and the add-ons to make the use case in total a deliverable use case. So in a high level, this would conclude our discussion for today. George, for you, I don't know how we would like to pick it up for the Q&As.
Fantastic. I mean, as Waleed alluded to earlier, we're getting lots of questions in from the audience, so thanks very much for those. We'll start working through them almost immediately, but first, thanks to Damanjeet and Waleed for setting the scene so nicely with that presentation. First question I want to take is for you, Waleed. The question is, how do you think that SGP.32, the framework for in-factory profile provisioning, also known as IFPP, will impact or help grow SGP.32? So over to you, Waleed.
Okay, thanks. I think this is one of really, let's say, a very interesting dimension perspective that I would really try to say, this is really a big challenging thing that would create a lot of momentum for the IoT specification. So on our side as G&D, we already have, and I talked about this in the beginning when we started talking, we have already devices that already have our OS on board, and we use an in-factory perso. So we are trying to deliver the complete to put it this way, pre-specs as defined up to today. So we are trying to cope one by one, whatever the specs is evolving to make it sure that we are keeping that and bearing in mind that whatever that we would produce based on the in-factory perso would end up with being a 32 ready device. So we are trying to provide and complement the whole chain by providing an IFPP ready hardware that can be manufactured with a special profile and ending up to be a 32 ready hardware that can be used in a device for the future. So in a high level, that would be my answer, but maybe we can provide more details on our website. Even there is a lot of details about our IFPP offering. And yeah, maybe we can take it in a different discussion and more in details.
Great, thanks, Waleed. Let's move on quickly to Damanjeet. Next question is, do you have already verified MQTT and or lightweight M2M solutions, or are they so far just connectors without proofs of concept?
Well, these are the protocols which are, let's say, have been recognized by the industry, and that's also the reason why we see these protocols mentioned also in the SGP.32 specification as annexes. And what G&D has done is it already has, let's say, in the POC package which I was mentioning, we can already provide support for such protocols. So if there is a use case where, let's say, an MQTT protocol needs to be used, or if you want to explore the lightweight M2M, then that is, let's say, part of the POC package, and then we deliver it and support you in testing that.
And just to complement, maybe Damanjeet, on your comment, as said, our POC package includes an MQTT end-to-end use case. So we define it. I mean, we don't provide an MQTT server on our side, but we already have it already defined and test cased with an MQTT partner from ours that it works. So if MQTT is the one in context, that's you get it done.
Great. So Waleed, does G&D's Bootstrap profile, that's the G&D connectivity, support LTE-M and NB-IoT?
Yeah, so that's really a good question. So from our side, we provide, let's say, the most available connectivity, regardless if it's NB-IoT or LTE-M, depending on the country coverage. So some countries may not have NB-IoT or may not have LTE-M. We are trying our best to be covering whatever is available in these countries. So we are getting, let's say, or at least on our side, we have a big list of availability of connectivity worldwide. We are increasing this on more or less weekly or monthly basis, but the quick answer would be yes, we would provide both options depending on the currently coverage.
Great, thanks. We've got a couple more technical questions that have come in, so I'll direct them to Damanjeet. The first one is, will G&D's EIM and EUICC be able to download EUICC profiles from MNO's non-G&D SMDP+? The questioner says they're currently using G&D's EIM and EUICC, but their preferred MNO uses Thales or IDEMIA or Keegan's SMDP+. So will my EUICC be able to download EUICC profiles from non-G&D SMDP+?
Well, thank you. Thanks, George, for the question. I think the question is long. My answer would be short and precise. Yes. I mean, if the components are compliant with the standards, let's say SGP.32 compliant, then all things work together well in hand. I mean, that's the whole purpose of having standards or specifications. So if each component is following, let's say the parameters defined, then of course, yes, you would be able to do, let's say, download profiles from any DP+, which is, let's say, GSMA certified, to the certified EUICC from G&D, even using an EIM. Yep.
Cool, that's a really important point, I think. The next of the technical questions for Damanjeet, how big in terms of flash can the IPAD component be on the embedded device, and how big in terms of RAM are the profiles?
Well, for the IPAD, it depends. So, I mean, we could basically, let's say, have variants of IPAD depending on the protocols. But let's say, to give a small range, it could be, let's say, between 400 or 700 kilobytes, but maybe this could be fine-tuned. Again, what G&D does here in this segment is that we provide it as a reference code. And what that means is that, you know, the user of this code, or the one who wants to implement it, has the flexibility to do it on their device, on their OS. You know, so for example, if it is running on a Linux environment, or it is running on real-time OS, any OS, then they have the flexibility to implement it and maybe even fine-tune it. So that's how I would answer the first part. The other one was about, please correct me, George, was it RAM or profile?
How big in terms of RAM are the profiles?
Well, profiles, maybe it's in terms of the space of the profile, or let's say how much it would consume. It's basically defined by the profile provider. So they have complete, let's say, flexibility on defining their own profiles, and it could vary from profile provider 1 to profile provider 2.
Okay, great. Let's try and bring Waleed in for the next question, which is, what is the difference between SGP.22 and SGP.32 profiles, and what is required from the network, device, and eSIM perspective to support both variants?
Okay, that's really an interesting question. So to be very fair, the DP+ or the core component that generates the profiles can generate both profiles. And this is, let's say, what is the most valuable add-on that the IoT specs is adding to the whole, let's say, salad dish. So you have your component, the DP Plus is there. You can prepare profiles that serves both. You only need to decide on your configuration, and you need to have some small minor extensions to use the core part. The add-ons that Damanjeet was referring to, which is the eIM or anything on the card level, this is more or less the add-ons that using your core generator for the 22 would give you the extension to go to the next level and be able to download a 32 profile. So using your core component, whatever any network provider as of today, they have the core DP Plus. It's a matter of an add-on on top and to address or be able to generate the profiles for the 32.
Excellent. Let's switch back to Damanjeet for the next question, which is, with regards to eIM ownership, I, as an enterprise user, am not keen on investing in owning an eIM. What options do I have?
That's an interesting one. Probably leading into the commercial aspect. I mean, we could have different options. Maybe you could have an option where so the beauty of SGP 3132 again is that you don't have to really have all your information in an eIM from the beginning, right? So it's kind of there is a handshake which happens between the device and the eIM, where eIM understands the characteristics of a device, and then you have the flexibility that maybe you don't want this from day one, and maybe you want to have this feature only once you want to use it. So that is something which could be let's say explored, I would say. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Moving on, let's go back to Waleed with this question. Are hardware that uses SGP.32 able to automatically use SGP.32? Is there any change in the firmware required?
Okay, that's interesting, because just to be fair, the hardware itself may be the same, but based on, let's say, the OS running and the certificates that would be installed on the hardware, this is different. So it's not using a standard SGP.22 hardware. You can download the 32 profile. There's a lot of, let's say, tweaks that you need to do. And there's a lot of, let's say, trials that was running in the market using different profiles from different specs, but fulfilling the same specification at the end as a use case, but not really the core specification, how it's defined. So looking to a main difference, if you compare a hardware that uses 32 or specified or configured based on a 32, you need to have two certificates on board, one that belongs to the eIM and one that belongs to the GSMA, where the DP Plus, let's say, chain of trust is there. So they may look like a hardware identical, but then if you go one level up to the OS or to the extensions or the root configuration of the hardware, they are not really 100% identical. So a serve of the server side, so the DP Plus or the generator of the profiles, you can serve both, but you need to have different adaptations. So you need a profile specific for the object that uses a 32, which is completely different than the object that uses 22. And we need to respect the specification in that.
We've got a similar kind of tone to the next question, although it is different, and I'll direct it to Damanjeet. The question is it possible to download technically an SGP.22 consumer profile to an SGP.32 EUICC, or is that not possible?
Cheeky question. So yeah, so it's I would say it's technically possible. So again, the control is on the profile provider. As I mentioned, maybe the profile provider wants to do some eligibility checks to understand that, hey, this is an IoT device and I have an IoT profile defined in my let's say in my ecosystem, and I want this one to be used in IoT devices. So then the control here goes in the hands of profile provider, where they can do some checks, understand what the device is, and utilize it. Maybe there is a profile provider, or there are profile providers who are fine if the consumer profiles which are out there are utilized on IoT devices, and then technically it is possible.
Okay, great. Got a couple more fairly technical questions. Either of you are welcome to go for them. The question is the eIM component interchangeable between SIM vendors? And the questioner clarifies, for example, can a profile be shared between eSIMs from different vendors?
Well, the EIM. So basically, as per the specification, if you want to use an EIM to speak to the card out there, so you need to have the public certificate of the EIM stored on the card. So if you can do this, then you are basically, and that means you have the private key on your side, then you can basically sign the messages and send it towards the EUICC. The EUICC would check the signature and verify that, hey, yes, this is coming from a legit entity. I know this entity, and then process it. So if this condition is met, then yes, the EIM can speak to the EUICC.
Okay, great. Next question is, what are the requirements on the device to support your over-the-air update, especially on low-end mobile modules without BIP or SIM toolkit support?
Can you?
So the question, so let me pick that up. So the question is a little bit not 100% clear, but maybe we can take it in different levels. So very easily breaking that down. If you look to the OS update of our SIM card, for example, this have nothing to do with the device itself. We only need to have a kind of a channel that is available on the hardware. So there is something that needs to be available on the hardware if we need to do the firmware update for the SIM card itself. If we talk about the device, this is completely out of our context as G&D. If we talk about OTA updates of files included in an eSIM profile that is already downloaded to the hardware, then it's all covered and have nothing to do with the device. So different OTA channels, different OTA approaches. So it's depending what is the final use case that the question is targeting.
So thanks, Waleed, for bringing that together. It was running in my mind, what OT are we talking about? So yeah, thanks for
Great, thank you very much. I'm afraid we're really close to running out of time, and we've had a lot of questions in. So I would encourage all our people who have presented questions that perhaps haven't been answered now to reach out with anything that we haven't covered now. There is a QR code on the slide that we've just nipped back to, that if you use that QR code, you can reach out to us or visit the G&D website to get some more information. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our speakers from G&D, Damanjeet, Singh, Chopra, and Waleed Badawy. And of course, I'd like to thank the audience for the huge amounts of great questions we've received. From an IoT perspective, we look forward to welcoming you to another IoT Now webinar again soon. So thanks again for attending today, and goodbye from me.
Thank you.
George.
Cheers.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Bye.